Welcome back to the Gold IRA Blueprint podcast. You know we love to do a deep dive into different companies, and today we're talking about Bullion Exchange, a very popular platform for buying and selling precious metals. So if you're an American retiree and you're thinking about a gold IRA, choosing the right company can be a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, it can be a little bit scary, I think, because, there's so many options out there. And it's important to make sure, you choose the right company for you and your specific needs.
And that's exactly why we put together that free checklist.
Yeah.
It really breaks down everything that you should be considering when you're trying to select a gold IRA company. You can find it at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive. But for today's deep dive, we are zeroing in on Bullion Exchange. So what makes this platform tick?
Well, Bullion Exchange is almost like a one-stop shop for precious metals. They are based in New York City, and they've basically created this digital marketplace where you can find just about anything, from gold and silver to platinum and palladium. And the cool thing is they offer these metals in different forms, like bars, coins, rounds. They really cater to both investors and collectors.
So it sounds like they have a little something for everyone.
Yeah.
I know some people are looking for those iconic gold bars.
Yeah.
Some people might be more interested in some collectible coins. It's interesting that they offer that kind of variety.
Right. And I think what really makes them stand out is that their platform is very user-friendly. Their website is very easy to use. You can navigate it, simply track your orders, access customer support. It's a very streamlined process.
That ease of use, I think, is really important, especially for retirees who might not be as tech-savvy as some of the younger generations. You don't want to be wrestling with some complicated website when you're trying to make these really important investment decisions. But let's talk about specifics. We've mentioned the variety, but how does their pricing compare to other players in the market?
Yeah, that's a big question, right? From my research, Bullion Exchange is known for its competitive pricing and transparency. You can really easily compare prices, see the premiums that they're charging, and have confidence that you're getting a fair deal. With precious metals, those premiums can vary. So it's really essential to do your due diligence and make sure you're getting the best deal possible.
Absolutely. And speaking of due diligence, what about security? I mean, we're talking about precious metals here, things that people really want to protect. So what does Bullion Exchange offer in terms of storage and keeping those assets safe?
That's a really great question. They do offer secure storage options, which is a big plus. They work with reputable independent storage facilities that are designed specifically for precious metals. And these facilities have, multiple layers of security, including 24/7 monitoring surveillance, very strict access control.
So you're not stashing your gold bars under the mattress or worrying about a home security system. You're really entrusting them to professionals who specialize in this kind of storage.
Exactly. And they also have regular audits by independent third parties to make sure that everything is on the up and up and that those security measures meet industry standards. That level of transparency and accountability is something to look for when you're choosing any company to handle your precious metals, especially in the context of a gold IRA.
Speaking of gold IRAs, if you're considering one, make sure to grab our free checklist. It's at goldirablueprint.com/exclusive. That's going to walk you through all those crucial factors that you need to consider when making this big decision for your retirement savings. But let's be realistic for a moment. No investment is without risk. So what are some things that potential users should be aware of when it comes to Bullion Exchange? Or even just investing in precious metals in general?
You're right. Every investment comes with its own set of risks. The first thing to keep in mind is that the value of precious metals can fluctuate, just like any other asset. It's influenced by things like passive, economic conditions, inflation, global events.
So it's not a guaranteed one-way ticket to riches, right? You have to understand your risk tolerance and have a long-term perspective when it comes to precious metals. You mentioned global events. That makes me think about the stability of the platform itself. Is there a risk associated with Bullion Exchange, the company itself?
Yeah, that's where the concept of counterparty risk comes in. It's basically the risk associated with the company you're dealing with. However, Bullion Exchange has a pretty good reputation in the industry. I mean, it's based on customer reviews, track record. They've been around for a while, and they've built a really solid foundation.
That's reassuring, but like you said, doing your research is always a good idea. Research the company, read the reviews, understand their background. What other risks should people be considering?
Well, one practical thing to be aware of is that there are fees associated with storage and insurance. That secure storage comes at a cost, which is understandable, but it's important to factor those fees into your overall investment costs when you're comparing different options.
That makes sense.
Mm.
You don't let those fees come as a surprise down the road. Now, for those who are intrigued by what they're hearing, how easy is it to get started with Bullion Exchange? What's that initial process like?
It's pretty straightforward, actually. The
Oh.
first step is you just create an account on their website. It's really quick and easy. You provide some basic information and then verify your identity. That's standard practice for any reputable financial platform. And then you're good to go.
Okay, sounds simple enough. What's next? What do you do after you've created the account?
Well, then you need to fund your account. They typically offer a couple of different options, like bank transfers. Those are usually the most cost effective. Or you can use a credit card if you want faster processing, although those might come with some higher fees. It really just depends on your needs and preferences.
The age-old convenience versus cost dilemma. We've all been there. So once the account is funded, you're ready to start building your precious metals portfolio.
Hmm.
What's that experience like on Bullion Exchange?
That's where I think their platform really shines. They've made it very intuitive and user-friendly. You can browse their catalog, which is extensive, by the way, and select the precious metals that you want. Whether you're looking for gold bars or silver coins or something even more specialized, they probably have it.
It sounds like they've really simplified the process of buying precious metals. That's great. But what happens after you've placed your order? Do you have to figure out the storage and security yourself?
No, that's one of the benefits of working with Bullion Exchange. They handle all of that for you. The secure purchase and storage of your assets. So if you choose their storage services, they work with those specialized facilities that we talked about earlier, which means your precious metals are safe and sound.
That definitely takes the worry out of it, especially for retirees who might not want to deal with all the logistics of storing valuable assets themselves. But I imagine some people might want to have more control over their precious metals. Maybe they even want to hold them in their own possession. Does Bullion Exchange cater to that preference as well?
They do. While they encourage secure storage, for safety and insurance reasons, they understand that some investors just prefer to take physical possession. So they do offer direct delivery to your doorstep.
Okay, that's good to know. Gives investors some flexibility and choice. What about the delivery itself? We're talking about high-value items here. What kind of precautions do they take to make sure that the shipping is secure and discreet?
Well, they're very careful about security and discretion. They use discreet packaging so it doesn't attract any unwanted attention. And they work with reputable insured carriers like FedEx or UPS Plus. You get tracking information so you can keep an eye on the shipment and you'll know exactly when to expect it.
Sounds like they've thought of everything. But what about after the sale? Let's say you have a question or you run into an issue. How responsive and helpful is their customer support?
From what I've seen in the reviews and my research, their customer support is generally considered to be pretty good. They have different ways you can reach them: phone, email, live chat during business hours. And they even have a really thorough FAQ section on their website that answers a lot of the common questions.
So it sounds like help is available if you need it. That's good. Now, we've been talking a lot about the positives, which is great, but it's important to acknowledge that no company is perfect. So in your research, did you come across any negative reviews or common complaints that people should be aware of?
Of course. You're always going to find a few isolated complaints, even with the best companies. Some users have mentioned that occasionally there are shipping delays, especially during busy seasons, or that it can be a little harder to reach customer service when things are really hectic.
Yeah, that's understandable. I mean, everyone has their off days, right? Even the best companies can have those little hiccups sometimes, especially when you're dealing with things like logistics and customer service. It's good to keep that in mind and manage your expectations.
Exactly. And it's always a good idea to take online reviews with a grain of salt. They can be helpful.
Yeah.
But remember that individual experiences can vary, and sometimes a negative review might not reflect the overall experience.
It's all about looking at the bigger picture and weighing the pros and cons. Now, beyond the nuts and bolts of buying and selling precious metals, I'm curious about the educational resources that Bullion Exchange offers. Do they provide any kind of guidance or information for people who are new to precious metals investing?
They do. They have a blog on their website and a whole bunch of articles that cover all kinds of topics related to precious metals. You can find information on market trends, investment strategies, even the history and cultural significance of gold and silver.
That's a great starting point for anyone who's just getting started and wants to build a foundation of knowledge. Kind of dip their toes in the water before jumping in. Speaking of jumping in, what are some of the most common questions or concerns that people have when they're considering using a platform like Bullion Exchange?
Well, I think one of the biggest questions people have is about fees. They want to know exactly what costs are involved, beyond just the price of the metals themselves, which makes sense. Transparency is really important when it comes to financial decisions.
Absolutely. So what kinds of fees can people expect when they're using Bullion Exchange?
Well, like we mentioned before, there are those storage and insurance fees if you use their secure storage service, and there might be shipping fees if you choose direct delivery. But they're usually pretty upfront about all of that. You can find all the details on their website.
Good transparency is key. It helps people make those informed decisions, factor those costs into their plan. What other concerns do people bring up?
Security is another big one. People want to know that their investments are going to be safe from theft or loss, both during storage and when they're being shipped, which is a valid concern, of course.
Right.
But like we discussed earlier, Bullion Exchange has those robust security measures in place.
Right. They've taken steps to minimize that risk as much as possible. Anything else?
Liquidity is a pretty common concern. People want to know how easy it would be to sell their precious metals if they needed to access their funds quickly.
That's definitely something to consider. You don't want to get stuck with an investment that's difficult to liquidate. So how does Bullion Exchange handle that?
They have a buyback program, so you can sell your metals back to them at the current market rate. It's a pretty convenient way to liquidate your assets if you need to.
That's a nice safety net to have. Gives you some options. Yeah. Now let's zoom out for a moment. Look at Bullion Exchange in the context of the bigger precious metals market. How do they position themselves in the industry? And who are some of their main competitors?
Well, Bullion Exchange is considered to be a well-established and reputable player in the precious metals market. They have a good reputation because of their pricing, their selection, their easy-to-use platform.
Okay, so they've carved out a good spot for themselves in what I imagine is a pretty competitive landscape.
Yeah.
Who are some of those big names that they're up against?
Some of their main competitors are companies like APMEX, JM Bullion, SD Bullion. These are all well-known and established precious metals dealers.
I've heard of those companies.
Yeah.
So for someone who's trying to navigate this whole world and choose the right platform, what are the key factors to consider when comparing Bullion Exchange with those other options?
Pricing is always a big factor. You really want to compare the premiums that each dealer is charging for the different types of metals, because those can vary a lot. And shipping costs are another thing to keep in mind, especially if you're making a large order.
Yeah, those costs can add up quickly, so it definitely pays to do your homework and shop around. What about product selection?